Good morning or good afternoon or good lunchtime. I am Mark Banfield, Band Faith Systems, and this is Listen Up. And what we do is we have a panel of people and we talk about different topics as they are important to salespeople and dealerships. We have talked about everything from doing a walk around to talking to the customer, getting the customer's information, picking the product. Today, we're going to talk about what I'm calling the management intro. In the business, we call it the TO. It's the handoff. It's the process of introducing customers to either the sales manager or more primarily to the business manager, the F&I person. What is the correct way to do that? When is the correct time to do that? So that's what we're going to talk about today. So listen up and learn something, and we're going to be here for the next 30 minutes. So joining me in today's session, I have a panel of experts because you don't want to listen to me talk for 30 minutes. So first of all, I'm going to bring on the screen Mr. Mike Mersman. So Mike, you want to give us a quick intro of yourself?
Well, okay, I will. Thank you, Mark. Excuse me. Yeah, I'm Mike Mersman. I've been in the business for quite a while. Have enjoyed the business, and today we're going to be talking about how to do a proper and productive turnover to the F&I manager during the process of selling the vehicle. So I'm glad to be here and just enjoying ourselves.
Okay. Joining us on the panel will be Mr. Alex Thayer from Michigan. Alex, you want to give us a quick intro?
Hello, I'm Alex Thayer from Michigan Dealer Service. Excited to take part in the webinar today and put some information out there on TOs. It'll be great.
Okay. Last but not least, I have Mr. Ron Catranio. I tried not to put him last. It just worked out that way. He gets a big head because he thinks he's the guy. In a lot of ways, he is the guy. But Ron, you want to give us a quick intro of yourself?
Man.
And I do have a big head.
Yeah. Look at the
Good afternoon, everybody. Ron Catranio, Professional Edge, based here in beautiful, sunny South Florida. Hoping to give you guys some good information. So listen up and take what we give you and go use it right away.
All right, guys. Welcome. Thank you. Good job. So again, the top today is I call it management turnover. Really what we're talking about is I want to start with the business manager, the F&I. So talk to me about when do you introduce the customer to the finance office? And how do you do that? What's a good way to do that? So someone can jump in with that topic.
So we're talking about the introduction to finance to finalize the details and paperwork. We're bypassing the sales manager in a TO.
I'm not saying we're bypassing the manager. We'll talk about that in a little bit. I'm talking about when do you, so basically the customer at this point in time, well, this is part of a how and when the customers agreed to the deal as presented to them, but they now need to pay for it, right? So what is the process? What's the correct way? What verbiage? What's the correct way to do this introduction? And how do you do it? And I bring that up, and I'm going to put this out on the table. I see a lot of dealerships in today's world where the salesperson will take the information back to the finance office, and then the finance office does their thing with it for the next 30 minutes to an hour before the customer gets to them. So is that good? Is that bad? Is that just a process? Is that the way it should be? Talk to me about this.
Well, that's a pre-stage for the F&I department to basically cut down on the amount of time that the customer is in the office, which is a good thing.
But the bad thing is the salesperson now is just kind of hanging out with the customer for this time?
Well, there's a lot of things they can do to be productive, and I'm going to let it go. You guys chime in there, okay?
I think one thing we got to take a step back for a minute. As far as a turnover or introduction, as early in the sales process as possible the manager and or the sales manager and or the finance manager should introduce themselves to the customer at some point in the transaction, as early in the process as possible. That way, when you get to the actual TO and closing a deal or getting ready to sign paperwork, the customer's already disarmed and they know who that person is that they're going to go see.
Well, and to add to that, Alex, that should be sort of set up way early in advance, so the customer has an idea of what this process is going to be. So he understands that he will be introduced to somebody in management at some point in the process. And whether it's the F&I manager, sales manager, general manager, the Pope, I don't care. But it needs, the customer needs to have an idea of what's going to happen.
Well, obviously now, if you're going to introduce the customer to the finance department, finance manager, you simply take the customer with your deal jacket, and your deal jacket should be 100% complete. Make sure that you've got payoff verifications, your insurance is verified, you know, all the necessary paperwork is in there and complete and readable.
Right.
Bring them into the finance department, sit them down. Mr. Smith, this is John Roberts. John purchased that beautiful 2020 Impala, and he's waiting to finalize ownership and paperwork. Mr. Roberts, this is our business manager. He will finalize the details and give you all your documentation and paperwork. Please don't forget to remind him about that extended service contract. Sometimes he gets busy and forgets. Anyway, I'll leave you in good hands. And Mr. Finance Manager, when you're done, just give me a shout. I'll come back and get him. When you leave, you're going to be getting the car ready for delivery. We'll talk more about that.
True.
Okay. Comments, guys, on what Ron just said.
Yeah. You know, I think the TO between the salesperson and finance manager, everybody knows beforehand what should happen and what is going to happen with the customer. Salesperson explains things to the customer. Hey, I'm going to introduce you. I got all the paperwork. You're going to sign the paperwork there. Come on in. And then Ron's introduction is perfect. Absolutely.
Okay. So
can I add something to that?
Yeah.
And try not to use any jargon or slang right now. Talk straight, honest, open. Tell the customer what's going to happen. You know, don't say I'm going to bring you and put you in the box. You know,
Right.
Right.
I hate that.
Don't put them in a box.
I got to tell you,
the F&I guy either.
Yeah, one other thing though, when I do an introduction, I want to make sure that some of the information, the personal information, you know, so it's like, Alex, this is Mr. Contranio, and they're looking at such and such a car. Here's what the deal is. They decided they want it, and they've got two daughters that do. One's a cheerleader and one's in gymnastics and so forth, and anything that they can talk about to add to the peripheral, soften the thing up from a relationship standpoint, is going to go over very, very well.
You know, I got to tell you, one of the things we used to do, I did this at the last dealership that I was with these guys for about 4 years doing their training, and we did some finance training as well. And I taught the finance managers to come out of their office and meet the customer in the showroom.
Right.
To come out, hello, Mr. Smith. My name is Ron Catronio. I'm the business manager. I'm going to be finalizing the details of your purchase today. Just wanted to verify a couple of things, and I'm going to go in and get everything into the system, and then I'll have you brought into my office. And go ahead and ask them questions about how are you titling it? Is it joint? Is it singular? You know, just give them some basic of what's going to happen. This way, I always like the customer to meet the 800-pound gorilla before they have to.
Right. Yeah, and that's a good idea. One other thing that Mark Banfield and I were talking about before we started this morning was what's the culture of the dealership in general. Okay. What we're talking about, I think, is going into detail, and we're really talking about a fairly soft turnover. That's not the case in all dealerships. Sometimes it's pretty hard. I mean, pretty impactful. And that's not my idea of what's good or even really productive in the long run. But every dealership has a culture, and they don't always do what they say they're going to do. But it's important that if especially a new salesperson in a dealership, it's important that they understand, hey, what's going to happen and how impactful it may or may not be. But it's something that you have to learn pretty quick.
Okay. I agree with all of that. So I got a couple of questions getting down to nitty-gritty real world. So when that salesperson takes the customer back to the business office, right, with the packet, like Ron was said, is not that information, or should that information be in the dealership's system so that the F&I manager pulls up the deal and it's already there?
It should.
You need updated insurance registration. There's paperwork that might not be in the system that you.
But I mean, as far as the vehicle, as far as the name, address, as far as the payoff, as far as the deal number, should that not all be there ready for F&I before that ever happened? The deal jacket.
If your dealership is using a desk management system, then they would have put the customer's information in: the name, the address, the city, state, zip code, the VIN number, the date of birth, drivers. They should have put that stuff on the worksheet.
Right.
So when it goes back into the office, besides everything in the packet, which is completely filled out and verified by the sales manager before it goes to the business manager, all they're going to do now is finalize the details, put it in. This should be a relatively happy time. A customer's going, I'm excited, because when you walk out of here, you're going to be an owner of a brand new car. Get excited.
So, Alex, you just kind of chuckled. You chuckled at something Ron said. What was that?
What were you saying? Sorry, I can't.
Wait a minute, I make you laugh? You think I'm funny?
Well, was it? What I picked up on when you was talking about the sales manager is signed off on everything.
Oh yeah. If you're following the process, like the dealerships always have the process that all right, sales manager signs off, and then the finance manager signs off. They should be following that process. It solves a lot of issues if they pop up.
So you used the phrase "should be following the process." Does that mean that there are dealerships that do not always follow their own process?
Oh no!
I've seen it once or twice, I guess.
So what do we do? Should that be invisible to the customer?
Is you have a process. It's okay not to follow your process, but if there's a problem that is consistently creeping in, you've got a documented process you can go back to and go, oh, we're supposed to be doing it this way. Does that work or does that not work? Why aren't we doing it that way?
Because Ron said this has got to be a happy time. You don't want these difficulties or not following the process to disrupt what you're trying to do with the customer.
Yeah.
Am I right in that?
The process is there to keep it a happy time.
Right. Okay. Another question that I had, again, I used to do F&I. You guys know that. For the world out there, I used to be the finance manager. I was responsible for getting the payoffs for our dealership. Is that the way it is today?
Not always.
Who gets the payoff? The salesperson gets it today.
Sometimes you got to go in there with a document that verifies the payoff with a 10-day payoff, the per diem, the account number. All that basic information has to be available. The more you do this, the more complete things are, the more expeditious things are going to be. In and out, done. Thank you very much. Have a nice day.
Right. So you're saying the salesperson in a lot of dealerships is responsible for that?
I believe they should be, yeah.
Okay. What about finding out what the payment is for the customer? Do they get the F&I department involved in that? As part of the deal, or have sales managers assumed that process?
It depends on the dealership, but oftentimes the sales manager puts a payment out there.
and they give them a payment spread.
Right.
Give them a payment spread with a reasonable APR. You know, it's not exact, but you got to give them some idea where they're going to be. Your payment's going to be $350 to $360 on, you know, blah blah blah. When they get back there, it can't be $490.
Right, guys. Let me share something with you. Back in the day, okay, as I was a sales manager and even an F&I manager, what worked for me was a spread of roughly $15 either side of a line. Okay. And it worked almost every time, because I would just ask the customer, you know, you're going to be somewhere in this neighborhood, and I'm going to say either probably about $15 high or low on either side of a line, which meant that it was a $30 spread.
So why are we putting a spread in the payment?
You can't be exact.
Number one, you don't know.
Why can't we be exact?
No, you don't know how good the customer's credit is, number one.
So why are we quoting payments to customers if we don't have an idea of what their credit is? Because in today's world, in F&I, the score is king, right?
Sure it is.
And that determines the rate, which sets the payment. So don't we need to know that to even quote a payment up front?
It depends on how your dealership works your deals.
Yeah. Every dealership's going to handle that differently.
More don't than do, for sure.
If the dealerships sold a customer a couple of cars in the past, you know, they can have a pretty good judge of where the individual is at credit-wise. So it's possible to have accurate payments based on a history with that customer before you get a credit application.
And the only time the payment's really going to be accurate is if you're quoting them a lease. If you're quoting them a traditional finance contract, that's always going to be with a spread.
So why don't you have a spread on the lease?
And also a fully secured spread. Don't go back there and just quote them a payment based on the money balance. Got to give the finance guy some room to make money back there.
Okay, so two things came out of what you just said, Ron. I'm going to address both of them. The first one is, why not a spread on a lease? Mike, you're a leasing expert too. So why not a leasing spread?
Because you can do a spread on a lease. I think more often than not, you can the way the banks tier the programs, you can dial into a specific payment on a car without tiering it.
Okay.
Without tiering it.
That's why you would want to spread those if there's you want to incorporate a tier 3 approval to a tier 1 approval. It just depends on how the sales manager runs the desk in that regard.
Or if you quote them a lease on 24 months or 36 months, you know, that would be a spread. But, you know, I don't want to go back
mileage, and so would condition. There's a lot of reasons that you would want at least a little cushion going in to a lease quote. And Alex, you named some, and Ron, I think that unless you know for sure, if you're running, a lot of dealers will run here's the car, here's the showroom floor, and here's the payment.
One of the biggest differences too, I think, between giving a spread on finance and not one on a lease, every state is different with their laws on this, but if you give a specific payment, you've got to be able to disclose the terms of that payment. So interest rate, term. If you're given a spread, you're leaving those things. Those aren't specified. The terms of that payment, but that payment spread.
Right. One thing is lease,
you can provide a specific payment because there's no interest rate per se to disclose.
Well, not only that, but there's also tax involved in a lot of different states. Do it a lot of different ways.
Okay. So Ron,
it's a rate back.
Go ahead.
Go ahead.
I was going to say the other thing you said was, I'm sorry, Ron. Go ahead. I'm going to shut up until you're done. Go ahead.
I'm done.
Are you sure? Okay. The other thing that Ron said was in a payment, when you give that payment, you need to leave a cushion for F&I.
Yes, you do.
Why?
Because you got products to sell in the back end.
Sure.
You quote him a raw payment. How's the guy going to add product to the back end?
You
A
sell
warranty. Go ahead.
Well, protection of one thing, security, insurance, life insurance, etc.
Okay, Alex, you're in the dealership world right now, right? You go into the dealership. How many dealerships sell credit life and credit disability today?
Credit life and credit disability, not so much anymore. It's more difficult and regulated, but certainly there's room for gap, room for service contracts, tire and wheel. There's a lot of products that you want to make it easier for your dealership to sell, and providing that cushion helps to do that.
Okay, so but shouldn't the F&I manager be able to sell it on the value of the product and bump and raise the payment from the base payment up?
Well, yeah, why not?
Ron,
if the finance manager is using a menu, and a lot of stores today use a menu. They have menus that go from a fully secured contract, and then others that are less secure, and they'll go through it. And each one they will go through and say, this is your fully secured contract, as you protected for X, Y, and Z. This one is going to be minus this. This one is minus this. Which would be best for you?
Right.
You always want to try and get them to sign in for everything.
Right. And you're trying to minimize
valid things, not bullshit.
Right.
Pardon my French.
And you're trying to prevent sticker shock with this cushion, right? Because if they go in on the base payment and then you add a service contract and you add gap and you add wheel protection or paint and fabric, sticker shock's going to get pretty large on that customer, right?
Yeah. Well, I think one of the things too with what Ron was talking about with providing a spread of payment to the customer is when you're at the point where the F&I manager's providing the cost and the payment bump on service contracts and his products, he's working with a specific payment too. So that range, the customer maybe already had the sticker shock of the high-end payment, and he's working off of the base payment on up. And so the anxiety level of a higher payment is reduced when you're using a payment spread.
Okay.
Does that make sense? Yeah.
Yeah, it does. It absolutely does. So I do want to get to the manager, the introduction to the manager. So basically, to recap this discussion, to introduce to the finance manager, it happens when the customer has decided to buy and it's now time to pay for it, some whatever way, finance, cash, whatever. And the salesperson needs to take the completed deal jacket with things like insurance and payoff, where the title is, back to the finance manager, which may or may not also be duplicated in some part in a system, in a dealership-wide system, correct?
Yeah.
The introduction is, as Ron said earlier, very nice, polite. And I love your point, Ron. We kind of blew past it, but your point was very accurate. Don't use jargon. Don't use dealer speak. Okay, talk honestly and clearly to a customer so they understand. They have a fear of going back to that guy in the office.
Right.
He's going to rape them. He's going to abuse them and sell them a bunch of useless stuff, right? And unfortunately, we brought that on ourselves over the years. We're getting better.
I got to tell you a quick little story. This was years ago. A big organization down here called the King Auto Group.
Yeah.
And they had multiple stores, Lewis King, Clay King, just real nice people. Did training with them for years. I was there doing training, and I'm walking across from one store to the other, and I encountered this little old man who's shuffling across the parking lot. And I said, sir, can I direct you someplace? He said, I'm looking for my wife. I says, where did you leave her? He said, well, they told me that she was in a box. This guy thought his wife had died. And they put her in a box already. I said, no, 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 sir. She's in the business office. Come with me. I'll bring you there.
Yeah, that's funny, but it's true. How many dealerships, right? You can't do that. All right, so that's the business office, F&I. Let's talk about introduction to the sales manager or the floor manager or the desk manager, whatever process the dealership has. How does that go? And when?
For who? For the customer?
I mean, how should it? When does the salesperson do it, and how should that happen?
Which
I will tell
happen, but no,
I will tell you that I always instructed my salespeople, introduce your sales manager as a last resort.
Yeah.
Work your customer as best you can. Because when the manager comes in, the manager, to be honest with you, he's the weakest guy on the floor.
Right.
Because all the manager's going to do is he's going to cut the deal to make a deal.
That's right.
Keep in mind, I tell the salesperson, understand, you're getting paid on this deal. He gets paid on every deal. He just wants to move numbers. You want to capture gross. So bring him in at the last moment, introduce him, and shut up.
Yep. And leave him some room if you're going to bring him in.
Alex, what were you going to say?
I think it helps to have the manager introduced to the customer as early in the process as possible.
Yes.
So that when you get to the point where you can't close your customer, say, you know what, I've done everything I can. Let me just touch base with Bob. You met him earlier, and just to see if we can put this deal together. Just give me a couple minutes.
So a nice
Bob, tell Bob what's going on, and Bob's going to come out and close the deal.
Yeah, you don't want,
and that's what managers do.
Right. I guess the key is you don't want the manager only showing up in the time of crisis, right? You want a friendly introduction, a no pressure introduction early on. Right. So when you come back in, there's already at least an acknowledgement of who they are, of what's going on at that point in time. They're not a hammer, because customers are pretty savvy to this process. They've learned over the years what happens. They know there are dealerships that they go in and they're going to get beat up, that they're going to see 3 or 4 people coming in trying to close them, that they're going to end up paying more than they want, and it's going to take way longer than they need. We want to get away from that, don't we?
Absolutely.
Sure. And if we do this process right, do we not get away from it?
Sure.
Yeah. Mike, you're thinking about something?
No, I'm thinking about a store that I had up in New Jersey that salesperson did everything. I mean, they did, and it was a great store, not that big, 100, maybe a little over 100 cars a month.
Okay.
But
so say they did everything. That includes the finance part of it, right?
Everything.
So,
but they were educated to do it too.
Does that change any of the concepts of what we're talking about here?
Does it? No, none of the concept.
They've still got to gather the information. They've still got to go through it. They trained the disclosure laws, obviously, for the contracts.
Right.
Truth in lending, truth in leasing. They need to know how to use the systems. But no, it works.
No.
Okay, guys, we're about out of time. This has been a fun conversation today. I like this when we talk about stuff like this. This is
what are we going to do next week?
I don't know. We'll figure that out. That's next week.
All right.
Oh, and by the way, anyone listening, we're not going to do this on Thanksgiving. Okay, that's a Thursday. We're not going to do that. All right, we're going to miss that week. Sorry. I'm going to be eating turkey about this time. So
I'll be eating crow.
Okay, you eat all the crow you want. I'm eating turkey.
I don't want to eat that.
All right, so it's that time of the day that time of the meeting where y'all get a soapbox moment where you can talk about literally anything. If you want to talk about cooking a turkey, now's your chance. If you want to talk about automobile stuff, now's your chance. But here's your shot at talking about what you want. We're going to go in a different order than I did the introduction. We're going to start with Alex. Alex, you get your soapbox first, so go ahead.
Hi, I'm Alex there. It was an interesting conversation. Slow down on your turnovers. Get your manager involved early. and put it together and make some money out there and close some deals. There's customers out there.
Okay, Alex, thanks. Now we're going to go to Ron, because I can't have Ron go last. I just can't. So, Ron, you're on.
Guys, just try and enjoy your business, enjoy your customer, have fun.
Okay, thank you, Ron. And that leaves Mike. Go ahead, Mike.
Well, thanks, guys, for saying what you've already said. I want to add to that in that make sure you think about what the customer's going through. Put yourself in his shoes or her shoes from time to time, and be kind to them and be respectful. And know that you've got a process that's kind of like climbing a ladder. You need to do every rung as well as you can, and always leave a little bit of cushion, because if you run out of cushion, it's really, really hard to close a deal.
Okay. That leaves me. I'm going to leave the other guys on the screen while I do the wrap-up. So, again, we talked about the intro today. When do you take the customer to the finance office? How do you introduce it? What do you need to do to prepare? How do you bring the sales manager or the floor manager into this discussion? Obviously early, so that when you need them down the line, potentially, there's not as much pressure. So we understand that every dealership has a process, and they want you to use that process. But take the concepts of what we talked about, which at its heart is building relationship with the customer, and use it in the context of what your management wants you to do. So that's our show today. We will be back next Thursday with some other part of the sales process, selling a car. And until then, have a great week. Enjoy November. It's a great season. I'm happy because we have football back. That's all I can say. We got football. But enjoy yourselves. And until next week, how do I do this?
You're number one.
I wanted to put everyone on the screen. Enjoy the season, and we'll see you next week. Thanks.
See you,
a lot.
everybody. Bye-bye.